I think the problem with women is that we are givers for the most part. And I think we are always busy taking care of other people or just being busy. And we really we don't prioritize understanding our own money. According to the statistics I've read, I mean, like over 60% of women would really rather do something terrible than think about their money. They just don't want to do it. And it's to me, it's kind of a fear that they have that is not well placed. It's a false fear. Knowledge is power, whether it's with your money or your health or any other thing. I mean, you don't want to put your health on autopilot, right?
Right.
Because if you don't go get a mammogram or you don't go get your checkup, you could be very sick. If you put your finances on autopilot, or you think that your partner is your financial plan, or your father or your mother or the guy down the street, those people, no one can be your financial plan but you.
What does it take to put your life's work out there in a really big way? How much can I do with this one precious life? Welcome to The Selfish Gift. Life is always coming at us fast, and that feels especially true when you decide to write a book. You take on this huge, ambitious commitment, and suddenly a home improvement project goes sideways. A family member has a health issue. You have crushing work demands, or some other huge interruption comes along and threatens to pull you off your path. My guest today experienced all of that and more, and is here to tell us how she got through it and managed to finish and launch her book. Kimberlee Davis is a certified financial analyst and the author of The Fiscal Feminist, a financial wake-up call for women. She's managing director and partner at the Bahnsen Group, where she specializes in personal wealth advising and financial retirement and estate planning for high net worth individuals and multi-generational families. And as a certified divorce financial analyst, Kimberlee's special gift is helping her clients transition to financial independence after life-altering events like death or divorce. Kim's mission and personal passion is to help women of all ages and wealth levels to achieve a solid financial footing in both calm and turbulent times. Through her podcast, her online platform, and Instagram account, which are all also called The Fiscal Feminist, Kimberlee empowers and educates women to embrace their responsibility to themselves and make sound financial decisions that will create peace, freedom, and stability in their lives. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Maggie, thank you so much for having me today. It's really a privilege to be with you today, because you've been on this journey with me from day one, when I had this notion that I wanted to write a book, which I might add, I did with such a cavalier way until I realized what I really got myself into. But yeah, it's really great to be here today, because you literally have been on the journey with the book with me from it being a kernel deep inside my mind.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I'm for those listening, I am Kimberlee's publisher through Wonderwell. And yeah, you really went through it, girl. You really did. We saw all kinds of ups and downs while you were writing your book, and you were just like facing the headwinds all the way through, and you managed to get it done. And the book is amazing. We're so proud of it. And I want to hear all about all those things that happened and how you coped with it. But first, let's just, if you tell us about the book itself and how it connects to your life purpose. So what is it about women and money, and why do you care?
Well, the book really is a manifestation of my concerns that as I lived my life and went through my journey, started to kind of bubble up in my brain because of all the things that I had experienced. I was an investment banker. I was first a lawyer on Wall Street, did corporate securities work, then I became an investment banker, and I've been an entrepreneur. Now I'm a wealth manager. But in between all of that, I had 3 children. I was married for 23 or 4 years, and then went through what people call a gray divorce, which means it happened in my 50s, in my case, in my early 50s. It was about 12 years ago. And I went through a variety of situations that were, they were like an apocalypse in my financial life, which then spread into my personal life in not very positive ways. So, without getting into all of that at this moment, there were some very trying times during my divorce that I believe and believe now, given my experience as a wealth manager and certainly as a certified divorce financial analyst, that if I had known what I know now, if I had planned differently, if I had been more inquisitive, more knowledgeable, on top of things a bit better during the course of my life, the outcome wouldn't have been as bad. And it was a very bad outcome at one point where, it could have gone either way as to how my retirement was going to be, right? So when I became a wealth manager, it took me a while to build up my personal book of wealth management business. But I did that over a course of, 7 years, whatever it is. And, now I have a robust book of business with clients I love, and it's turned out to be an amazing career for me. But along the way, I realized really deep in my heart, and, who knows why we have these things, but, my passion is I never want any woman to go through what I went through. I had a lot of fear. I was paralyzed by the fear, specifically after certain, the unfortunate series of events that occurred during my divorce and after the divorce decree that literally was only honored for 6 months and then wasn't honored by my ex-husband, thus causing me not to have any alimony or money. This caused a lot of fear in my life. And I realized that whether we like it or not, money is the cornerstone of how we get through this journey. Okay. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. And if I had done certain things better, I'd be in a better position. So I didn't want anyone else to make the same mistakes that I did. I know that women, we've had a long journey. We have had a lot of iniquities. There isn't parity. There still isn't parity economically, and certainly not with respect to our rights. But the reality is that I didn't want anyone else to go through that. So I got it in my head that I wanted to start a platform for women of all economic strata, not just my clients who have wealth managers. And I began the platform just by writing a series of blogs because I thought, I'll write blogs and maybe people can read them and it will be useful to them. That's how the whole thing started. I didn't know what to call it. So I started off with trying to figure out a name for it. And that's how the Fiscal Feminist kind of came into being as a platform. And from there, I started to do some podcasts, and then I established a social media platform, which is on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and all that stuff. And then I guess at one point I was just like, okay, I think I want to put all of these topics with the why into a book.
So the subtitle of your book, the book is called The Fiscal Feminist, and the subtitle is A Financial Wake-Up Call for Women. Why do women need a financial wake-up call? You've talked about your own challenges and your desire to help people avoid the situation that you found yourself in. But what are we not getting? What do we not understand about our money? What's the wake-up call?
Well, I think, just historically, women have had a different narrative with money, right? The first reason is it's for a long time, we didn't have the same economic rights or the rights to money that men did. And hence the way people talk to us about money and the way people still do talk to us about money in some ways is very different than the way men interface with money. So, I mentioned this in my book and I mention it all the time, but, in 1976, when I graduated from high school, women could not get a credit card without the signature of a man.
Which is just one of the kind of like jaw-dropping nuggets that I learned in the book. I think that we think that, that's so far in the ancient history, and it's just not the case. Like that's recent, and that's shocking, that level of disenfranchisement and inability to fully participate in our own economic activities.
Yeah, and so put that in the context of the timeline, right? And before then, obviously women couldn't own property until, they could really until the late 1800s in some states, in any state. And so we never, our antecedents with respect to money and property ownership and building net worth wasn't really there. It grew over time as we started to vote and we started to fight for those things, but really the narrative wasn't there. And so women haven't had the benefit of that long historical owning property, having money, and it being, kind of accepted. So there is that. Also, in conjunction with that, there still is not parity in payment to women in their salaries. That's a fact. They make 82 cents to each dollar a man makes, even today in 2022. And we also have a myriad of other things that we have to contend with. And along with the inequity in income and how we get paid, I think also due to the fact that we do 70 to 75% of all caring responsibility for whether it's our parents or our children or whoever, we get stuck doing it. That's a fact, even if we're the primary breadwinner. It causes us maybe to have gender segregation in the choices of careers that we choose. And that may make us less bulletproof when there's a recession or a pandemic or something to that nature. So those are kind of like the macro things, that we have to deal with. And then the micro things that we have to deal with are, we are caregivers. And so this takes a lot of a hit on us. We, don't contribute as much to our retirement because sometimes we step out of the workforce or work less. We don't contribute full time to our Social Security for exactly those same reasons. We don't have the same career development for exactly those same reasons. So
not only that, but women's products often cost more than the exact same product that's marketed to men. So life is literally more expensive for women, even without thinking like, oh, she has a thing for handbags. No, it's not about that. Like we have a thing. We buy razors. They are more expensive. Our haircuts are more expensive. Our dry cleaning is more expensive. Like it's just more expensive to be a woman.
We wear makeup. We get our hair done. We do things like that. But the other thing that women have to worry about is that they statistically live longer by 5 years than men. So they have a longer period of being alive, which on the bright side is we get to live longer. On the negative side is if we don't have enough money to fund that lifestyle through our elder age, it can be really very bad. And to your point, our medical costs are higher across the board. And as we are older, we have a longer period of time of paying for these medical costs. And I think the problem with women is that we are givers for the most part. And I think we are always busy taking care of other people or just being busy. And we really don't prioritize understanding our own money. So I think all of those things have put us a little bit on the back foot. And I think a lot of women, and according to the statistics I've read, over 60% of women would really rather do something terrible than think about their money. They just don't want to do it. And it's to me, it's kind of a fear that they have that is not well placed. It's a false fear. Knowledge is power, whether it's with your money or your health or any other thing. You don't want to put your health on autopilot, right?
Right.
Because if you don't go get a mammogram or you don't go get your checkup, you could be very sick. If you put your finances on autopilot, or you think that your partner is your financial plan, or your father, or your mother, or the guy down the street, those people, no one can be your financial plan but you. And you can still be in a relationship with somebody else and be in charge of your finances and knowledgeable about them. It doesn't make you any less of a partner. But women, I think, also have thought it awkward to talk about money with their partners and other people in their lives. And again, that has been a detriment because often I spoke to someone just this morning who's looking for a CDFA. I'm recommending someone for them to work with. And she was a lawyer for several years, stepped out of the workforce, has no idea of all the accounts, doesn't really know exactly what her husband's making.
Amazing. And she's a lawyer. This isn't somebody who like, oh, I haven't had money around me. I haven't had to think of it because I'm broke or whatever. Like, no, there's money flowing through her life. She's just disconnected from it.
Yeah. And this is honestly, this is not uncommon. She is actually not the exception to the rule. I have women who come in with my clients who are married, and they have no idea. They don't even want to come in half the time. And I'm like, I don't have meetings with just one person.
Oh.
So both people have to come in. If they don't, then I'm not having a meeting. I'm not doing that. I don't play that game. Now, the other thing I would like to add too is, and I don't want to make this into a political thing, but, if women can't control their reproductive rights, this, I want to say, I'm going to write a blog about this, hopefully this weekend if I can get my shit together, but, if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast.
Yeah, it's encouraged. Yeah.
Okay. So, I want to say, is inflation more important than your reproductive rights? If you're going to vote, are you going to vote for people who talk about inflation and recession, which are short-term economic negatives to your life? Because actually, losing control of reproductive rights for women who are still able to have children will affect their economic and financial life for the rest of their lives. It will negatively impact the economy over time. And these are the same women that probably aren't going to be able to get any kind of, benefit, because many of them live in states where they don't believe in child care tax credit or, helping people with child care and parental leave and all that other stuff. So who takes the hit on this? The woman who may not be equipped to have a child or pay for a child. These are the reasons why women need to wake up, because I hate to break the news to them. The cards are still stacked against us. And the other thing, since I'm on this topic, is that I said this last week in a speaking engagement I had, and I think it resonated, but, we used to talk about all this stuff a long time ago when Roe v. Wade became Roe v. Wade, and when, people talked about equal rights and, equal pay and all that stuff back in the 70s and the 80s, the second wave of feminism or whatever you want to call it. But I don't feel like we talk about women's economic issues very much anymore. I think there are so many other issues in the world that are pressing that this has really gotten sidelined, and it is huge, the effect that it has on individual women's lives and also the economy in general.
Right, because we're half the population, and so if women are impoverished, then the country is impoverished.
It negatively affects GDP. It's a fact. It is a fact. So for me, it's like this is an emergency in my mind. It's not like something we can sit around and ponder now. Things are getting serious now, okay? And we still don't have effective protections for women who, in pregnancy, them getting their jobs back or getting the same jobs back or not being discriminated against because they have a kid. We still have a motherhood penalty where women are like 10% less likely to get a job if they have kids vis-a-vis their counterparts who are single women or women without children or their male counterparts. Women actually get a pay reduction when they have children. Men actually get a 6% pay increase.
Wow.
Because we still believe that men are the breadwinners and that when they have a kid, they're taking care of their family. And when women have kids, they think she's going to work less.
Kim, it's one of the things I love most about you and your whole approach to this topic and the book is that you are political, that you're feisty. I always say that you're like a combination of you're a mashup of Susie Orman and AOC. You're like.
Well, I wish I was as young and looked like AOC. Yeah, it would be good.
Like wake up people and get out there and like make change in our legislation, in society, in the norms, in what we expect, and in the conversations that we're having. But the other aspect of your book is that it's a real tough love book that's equally tough as it is on the love. So you've just been talking a really tough line there, and I love it. But you're also super supportive of women in this book. You put it on our own shoulders to deal with this problem. So we've just been talking about the laws and what we can do in terms of changing the laws in our country.
It's macro
but we
and micro.
We have to take it on ourselves too, and that's part of your message, right? Is like nobody's going to come and save you. You have to do it for yourself. But the other thing I love in this book is that, like, for example, you call budgeting an act of self-love, an act of self-care. So talk to me about how we can reframe this instead of like, another thing that I'm doing wrong or failing at, into, no, this is a way of caring for myself.
Yeah, and it is, because right? If you are suffering financial stress, whether you can't pay your rent, you're living paycheck to paycheck, maybe you can't afford health insurance, whatever it is, you're going to be stressed, right? Your blood pressure is going to be high. You're probably going to be having bad habits if you are like me. I was no stranger to a drink during those times. Those things make you unhealthy and they will follow you throughout your life if you don't change them. So all of this is, if you want to look at like, how do I become a less stressed out person who's healthier? Well, then you got to look at all the habits that you have, right? Do I, eat too much fatty foods? Do I not work out? And am I living a completely financial life that's in turmoil, which even if I have the healthiest diet and I work out every day, if I'm a financial mess, I'm still going to be stressed out because I might not be able to pay my rent. Or if something happens, I might not have any backup in liquidity or cash to help me through a bad time. And
Right.
it's then going to be a really bad time. So I believe everybody, this has to be approached on a macro and micro level. Macro is use your vote, use your voice. When you're choosing companies, look for a company to work at that has policies that are favorable to women, actually walk the walk, talk the talk. But on a micro level, we all are responsible for ourselves. We come into this world on our own, we leave on our own. Unfortunately, and I mean, I'm as big a Sleeping Beauty fan as any other with fairy tales, but it just ain't true. Okay. So I would love Prince Charming to show up or Princess Charming or somebody charming to show up, but it's probably not going to happen. So I would just say that we then as individuals have to take responsibility for ourselves and just worry about ourselves. And just like you would worry about your health and your self-care, this is an integral part of your self-care and your self-love. It's like the old adage, if you're on an airplane and you got to help somebody with the oxygen mask, put your own on first. Well, this is that. And even if you don't have anyone else to help out, don't you want to live your best, happiest life
Right.
into your old age with dignity, not worrying where your next dollar is coming from, not living strictly on Social Security when you're 75, 85 years old? You want to have, that's the moment in life where you want to be enjoying life, not worrying about if you can pay your rent and end up, God knows where.
Right.
So it is, in my mind, this is all about self-love. If you love yourself, and I wish more women love themselves as much as they should, because like I said, women are kind of the cornerstone of society, in my opinion. They really do. They are caregivers. They are, multitaskers. They try to be perfect, which they really shouldn't be. They need to, I talk a lot about the competence versus confidence issue. Women have to, they strive to always be perfect. And they really do need to take a beat and love themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best role model we can give to younger women, whether they're our daughters, our colleagues, students, whatever. If we don't show them that, like by putting everybody else first, we're not benefiting ourselves and we're not benefiting those that rely on us, whether it's our children or our parents or whoever. So to me, it's like, it's so basic. If you love yourself, you're going to get your shit together. And also, you have to view this as, you don't have to take the whole thing on today. Okay. I really try in this book to give you a roadmap, but with small digestible pieces, right? I was interviewed for something, I think it was The Balance. I think it was that publication the other day. And what I was saying is, you got to just start with small goals, right? Do one goal at a time, because you have these goals go in order, and as you accomplish one, you move on to the next, pat yourself on the back, have a glass of the bubbly, go to the next one, so on and so forth. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're going to have a budget or you're going to look into your finances and say, oh my God, I can never get my nails done again. I can never have a Starbucks again. My life is going to be terrible and I'm going to be miserable.
Right, because part of this is about creating a life that you enjoy and that is your own life to live. So in your book, you cover, what I love about it is that you cover really so many aspects of the aspects of life that contribute to a woman's overall financial picture. So relationships, career planning, et cetera, et cetera.
And relationships are very important, because people that you meet can negatively affect your bottom line.
Right. And people that you share a house with, whether that's a romantic partner or a roommate.
Right.
But right in the center of the book, there is some real nuts and bolts, just money management stuff. And it is the 5 steps to financial freedom. So can you quickly walk us through what those 5 steps are, please?
Yeah, and these are kind of something that I know some reasonable minds can differ on this, but then I would say they weren't very reasonable. And the reason I'm saying that is, there is a process here. And what I get a little bit worried about is sometimes people give advice and they're like, yeah, just start investing,
Right.
Invest in these things. Like there are finfluencers, as they're called now, all over the place. And I was asked the other day by Investment News, are you a finfluencer? And I'm like, I don't think so, because I actually have the chops to talk about this. I've been a wealth manager. I've been in the capital markets for years, but there's a process to this, right? This isn't like, let's get rich quick and solve all my problems because I invested in cryptocurrency and I happen to get lucky at one point. This is a process. This is long term. This is really about infrastructure. So this is the first thing I'm going to say to everybody they have to do before you max out on your 401k, before you start picking stocks and bonds you want to invest on. You've got to do this other stuff. This is like building a house. This is your foundation. And once you get this in order, you're good to go. So the first thing you need to do is you need to create a badass budget. I know people hate the word budget, and I hate to use the word budget because it's boring and that no one wants to think about it. Think of it as more of a cash flow analysis. How much money do you have coming in? How much money do you have going out? Those are the 2 things you care about the most. If you don't know that, you don't know anything about your life. So you know how much you make, you know what other inflows you have. That's the first nugget of information you need. Then you just got to say, okay, I know what my rent is. I know what my car payment is. You add up those things, and then you look at all the other money you're spending. And if you're spending like, way over what you're bringing in on, other things that are discretionary, then you know where you need to start doing your work, right? Because you're probably bridging that gap between what you bring in and what you spend with credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
So the second thing you got to do is eliminate all credit card debt. I'm not saying don't use credit cards. I use credit cards. I get points. I just booked a 3-day thing in Palm Springs, and I used, 100,000 American Express points, whatever it was. Pay the bill off every month. But if you have credit card debt, do not go on to anything else. Pay it off. And you can use the debt avalanche method, which is paying the highest interest credit cards off first, or the debt snowball method, which is paying the smallest balance off to kind of give you some, inspiration. But there are many methods. I talk about them in my book, and you can find them all, you can research other things. But, get the debt off your ledgers, because then the third thing that's important is that you have to maintain a good credit score, because that gives you leverage in what the interest rate on your loans are going to be, who's going to rent you a house, who's going to sell you a house, what your car payment's going to be. So that infiltrates through all other aspects of your financial dealings. So once you get rid of the credit card debt, your credit score should go up. So just keep, monitoring that. Then the fourth thing, which is very much a cornerstone to being financially organized and secure, is start to save your money, because you don't have to pay your credit cards anymore. You know what's coming in, you know what's going out. You set a little budget for your discretionary spending, so you know you've got whatever that number is per month to spend on fooling around. And then you take 20% of what you bring in and you put towards savings. And because now you don't have to pay debt, right? So the emergency savings fund, I always encourage people to have 4 to 6 months of just cash sitting there. That's for if you get sick, if your partner gets sick, if you lose your job, if you decide you hate your job and you want to pivot and just have some money while you're trying to figure out your next move. Once you have that in place, then you are in a very good financial infrastructure situation. You have a solid foundation to go on to take on maxing out on your 401k, to setting up an investment account or buying a house or whatever it is, or start to save for buying a house. But the fifth thing I say is have fun with savings. Because if you don't view it as fun with a positive attitude, then you won't want to do it. So baby steps, and having a good attitude about it and saying, you know what, like when you start looking at your bank account and you see that you've got 5 or 6 months worth of money sitting in there, and you know that you've got yourself covered in the event there's a pandemic or some other thing that we don't know that's going to pop up, right? You will be like, yeah, I'm a badass. I got this together. I know I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to have to like go borrow money or incur more credit card debt that I'm never going to get out of and maybe have to declare bankruptcy that will dog me for 7 years. So this sounds boring. It's not like, hey guys, I've got the 5 best stocks for you to invest in and you're going to be rich tomorrow. Mm-hmm. This isn't, you're going to retire at 32, because I still think that's a fallacy. And just it's a soundbite that people like to talk about. But yeah, I think people don't understand that most people could live to 100 now. So I don't know what retirement means to them, but it could be a very long time. So if you do these things, I promise you, money back guarantee, these will change your financial life, and you need to do them. And you need to do them with a smile on your face and realize that it's just as important as going to get your mammogram or going to the dentist, whatever it is, to make sure that your body's still functioning. This is just as important.
So I love that thank you for laying those out. And it does sound easier said than done in some cases, especially, the putting 20% aside for savings. I mean, you and I both live in Los Angeles, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world.
But even if you can't do that, I don't care if it's $10. Mm-hmm. Just start with something. Mm-hmm. I tell people all the time, do it on automation. If it's $25 a week, just do it. Maybe that's 3 or 4 Starbucks you can't have. Mm-hmm. And I also have other things in my book that help you kind of accomplish saving, like little things that you can think about before you make an expenditure that maybe in retrospect you shouldn't do, or you did kind of on autopilot because you're on your laptop and you're just doing some internet shopping that you can't even remember what you bought until it gets delivered. But I would just say, you can automate little, even if it's like $5. Start wherever you can start, because that is what's going to get the ball rolling. Because you're going to see after a month, maybe you saw $25 a week, you got $100 in there.
Right.
That's something.
Right.
That is something.
And so much of this is about mindset, knowing that like I'm a person that doesn't have debt. My savings may be small and they're growing, but at least I'm going in the right direction, and that's hugely empowering and so different from feeling like you're just snowed under.
Because you'll never get out of it, and it dogs you with your credit score.
Right.
And that affects so many other things.
Well, and it affects your self-esteem and your feeling of, and it affects your very real, limits your freedom of choice, right? What can I do with my life? What can I do with my day? And I always say that, like, people say money doesn't buy happiness. And I think that that's true. We certainly know rich people who are miserable. It doesn't guarantee 100%. Happiness, but you know what money does buy? It buys the freedom to make a choice about how to deal with a difficult situation. None of us can avoid getting into difficult situations or having bad luck befall us in life, but having bad luck befall you when you've got a financial cushion under you is very, very different than the alternative.
100%. And I've been in both situations. I've lived, during the divorce, like I said, I lived paycheck to paycheck. I sold jewelry to pay for food, and I've had a lot of problems where I was like, I had a point where, I was hard for people to get a rental because my credit was bad because I was using credit cards to try to get through life. And so I get I hear that, and I get it, but I wasn't really cognizant of a lot of the stuff because I was so overwhelmed with worry and, the divorce and everything. But all I can say is, money doesn't buy you happiness. I'm not saying that. I don't view money as a conduit to happiness. I view it as a conduit to security and calmness. Calmness just means you can deal with problems in your life without freaking out. That's it. Is it going to make you the happiest person in the world? No, but you'll at least be calm and unhappy if you can't, whatever you're unhappy about, right?
So I really love that your whole purpose in life now is to, empower and support other women to make their lives better. And of course, for you, writing this book is not just about helping others, but also about making, empowering decisions and moves in your own life and career. So let's pivot the conversation now and talk about the writing experience and your decision to write this book in the first place. I would love to know, Aside from all the, the reasons that you've just given us, why did you decide to write this book? Like what was it meant to do for you personally?
So, like I said, at the beginning of this whole fiscal feminist creation of the platform, I didn't really think of it as a platform. I thought of it as a blog, right? And then it started to evolve. I am an entrepreneur. I've created businesses in the past. I had my own fashion business in London and sold the clothes at Saks Fifth Avenue. So I'm no stranger to building a business. And so with everything that, I can't ever do anything like this. So the book came along because as I started to flesh out in my head what I want this platform to be, the book is an important component to building the bigger platform, right? So I had the social media presence clicking along. If you want to follow me on social media, please do so at the Fiscal Feminist on Instagram, and you can also find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I was doing the blog, but it was also under the Bonson Group kind of umbrella, right? So I started thinking a little bit more about this, and I thought I actually want this to be a robust platform that can be educational, and that could also be a place for me to find speaking engagement so that I could spread the word, and that I can really, make a difference in its own right. So I created the Fiscal Feminist LLC, which is the company that owns all the intellectual property and everything else. I have my own podcast, and so I've separated that out, and I have my own now podcast platform that is strictly for the fiscal feminist. I have my own website now called www.thefiscalfeminist.com, on which you can buy the book, you can see everything that I do in the media, you can read all my blogs, and then I'm now working on online courses that people will be able to take, not only in personal finance, but retirement, investment planning, divorce strategy, some other topics I think a lot of times people don't have courses on that I think are almost as important as personal finance. So I'm in the process of doing that. The reason that I wrote the book is I thought, okay, before I get into the website and all the other stuff, I want to establish myself as an expert in the field. I have the background. I'm not, like some of these people on TikTok who are influencers who are 21 and I don't even know what qualifies them to talk about some of this stuff. I'm not that person. I've been kicking around for a long time. I have a lot of experience, but I wanted it to be manifested and displayed through a book. So that is why I decided to write a book. And I had no idea if it was going to be like a 10-page book or a 1,000-page book or a 200-page book.
Somewhere in between.
I just thought I just need to write a book because I think that is how people get the ability to establish their expertise and be recognized in their industry and outside their industry as an expert if the book is good and well received and has chops.
I really like that you have this whole integrated approach, and those are a lot of different elements to build, right? The podcast, the courses, and one of the things that I want to ask you about is this shift from blogging on your company website. So you mentioned the Bonson Group, and you were blogging as the Fiscal Feminist, but kind of under their umbrella, and you had to kind of migrate and set up your own personal brand around this new brand identity. So tell us what that was like, and really how hard it was, and how much money it took. I mean, to be specific about that, but give us an idea of what did that really take to put together? Because it sounds exciting. I know a lot of people want to do it, but it also sounds like a lot.
It is. It's a lot of time and money. I still will put my blogs up on the Bonson Group. It's just the podcast won't go through there, but some of the one of the reasons I wanted to have my own website was I will write about reproductive rights. This is not something that should be sitting on the Bonson Group website. That's about my wealth management topic. So I'm about to also write a blog on women in cryptocurrency. That will be also on the Bonson Group website because that's about my wealth management practice. And, that's in the zone, right? So for me, again, I think of women's economic situation as a very huge group of many elements that just aren't about, portfolio construction and financial planning. That's why I've done this other thing. So yeah, so this is,
and I know that you have partners in the Bonson Group, right? So you wanted to, it was really important to you to put together your own LLC and also these branded platforms that are your own, and that so that your own. I mean, in many ways, you're like following the advice that you give in the book, right? You're not interweaving your kind of destiny and future and ability to kind of control your own output.
This is different,
with your partners.
Look, the thing is, all my experience and knowledge from wealth management play into my expertise as a fiscal feminist, but these are separate things, right? Fiscal feminist is my brand. It's my passion. It is. It isn't me counseling, higher net worth people about their money, which is another expertise. It also lends to my ability to tell people about how to become those people.
Right.
But, it is my own brand. And so, my partners have always known, and this has always been my own intellectual property. And we've all set up our own intellectual property within the group. Each of us, or some of us, do have our own podcasts and blogs. But I'm the only one that's really gone off to do my own branding in this way. And the reason is because I think it's a very specific thing for women. And it, like I said, many different things. But it was a business, right? It's a business. So I needed to do a business plan, because just like with any other business, I had to decide in my own mind, okay, am I doing this strictly to get the message out and, maybe write a blog a month and just let it be like that? Or am I really doing this to make this into something that might have legs with or without me? Because I want it to be a collaborative effort as well. I want to bring a lot of other experts in, and I want this thing to have its own legs. I want it to be a collective of women also within the website, so that we can have webinars or people ask questions and get involved. So I had to sit down and say, okay, what do I want to get out of this thing? Well, I want to feel like I'm making a difference. That's the most important thing. If people aren't hearing my message or it doesn't resonate, then I should just do my wealth management practice and live my best life, which would be way easier than what I'm doing right now. Because some days I think on a Saturday when I'm sitting here writing something and it's sunny out and I could be outside hanging around, I think, why am I doing this? Like I have a job. It's a good job that I love. Why don't I just do my job and have my weekends and not worry about, the fact that I have to always be writing something, and just hang out? Because I really care about this. This is not like a manufactured thing. This is like in my heart. So I had to do a business plan. Have I spent a lot of money? Of course I have. The first thing is, okay, I create all the content, but I'm not going to sit around and pick every picture for social media and do the posting calendar. I don't have time for that. I already work 12 hours a day. So I had to employ a social media group that helped me with this stuff, who were awesome. I had to pay a web designer who's handling the website and all that kind of stuff. With respect to hybrid publishing, as you know, I put quite a bit of money into the book. Do I think the book will end up paying me back all the money I put into it? Who knows? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that I didn't go into it with that expectation. I want to sell a lot of books, because this book, I think, really is a good roadmap. And I know that people who have read it say to me, I really love this book because it's a very different kind of financial book, and I've learned a lot from it. But the book was part of the overall business plan of what I needed to establish my my gravitas.
Right.
So there was the book expense. So, I would say definitely, I'm well over $100,000 of investment into this, well over. And I'm very fortunate that I have the background and the knowledge of how to start and run a business, and that I have the ability to find that money to put into it. And now the next thing I've had to kind of grapple with is the timing of putting together the courses, because I need assistance in doing that. Right now, courses have video in them and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know how to do that, right? So I will have to have a capital outlay to do that. So I've done my own projections on, well, if the course is good and it's organic and it grows so that there's people can come back and we revise it and update it. Also, maybe there's a consultation part of the course. People can come in and have like every 2 months or every month kind of a short meeting to talk about things, whatever. But I don't know how to do that, and I don't have the time to do it all on my own. So that will require capital outlay. So I have to always be, looking at what I've spent, what I think I could ultimately make. So I made a decision that in order for this to be sensible for me, I would like it to become also something that produces revenue for me. Obviously, that's not happening. It's starting to happen now, but I had to lay the infrastructure like any other business. I had to write my business plan. I had to have money to invest in it, and then forgetting about the money, just the time.
Well, that was the next thing I was going to ask you. So, I mean, one thing that you didn't spend money on and didn't need to spend money on, Kim, that some folks in your situation would, is a ghostwriter. You wrote your entire manuscript yourself, and you did it while working crazy bone-crushing hours and also dealing with a whole bunch of like unpredictable life challenges. So talk to me for a minute about what it was like to write this manuscript and what were the headwinds that you faced along the way.
I remember when, so you have to do the book map or book.
We did a book plan. We started with a book plan. That's, yeah.
Right. So I remember, worked with the editor I had, Allison, on the book plan. And I thought, okay, we're getting together. This is what we're going to talk about. These things make sense.
Right. Because just to bring everybody up to speed on like where you started from, you knew what you wanted to write about, like, this topic, but you didn't have an outline. You didn't have a book proposal. You didn't actually have like, here's my table of contents that needed to be developed. Right. And so you worked collaboratively with our editors just to kind of like set the frame, right? Here's what the book will contain and how we'll structure it.
Going to talk about,
right?
These are the granular things. Because I remember thinking, I want to write a book, and then I talked to you guys, and I was like, oh dang, I gotta really get granular with this,
Right.
So then, okay, we do that, and that's all good. I'm also proud of myself. I'm like, I got my table of contents. I kind of know what I'm going to do, and then I sit down in front of my computer, and I'm like, chapter 1, and I remember Allison, who's my editor, saying, you don't have to write the chapters in order. If you want to write chapter 5 first, because you think that's going to be easier to start with, do that. And in fact, that is, I think, what I did. I started with what I knew the best, which was I wanted to get into the finance stuff because I knew I could write about that. And then I started, but it was difficult because it's like, everybody says it when they write, you just sit down and you look at the computer and like, okay, well, what am I going to call this? Now, I had the benefit of having written blogs for a while. So I had my style. I was also a lawyer for many years. So tried not to write too much like a lawyer because that's a snooze fest. But I know how to write. But yeah, that was just hysterical. And then I started to get my momentum, but it came in waves, like I could be on a roll, but look, I literally spent probably 2 years of my life almost every weekend, except for when other things were just so overwhelmingly ridiculous, or a holiday or whatever, where I was writing the book.
Yeah.
Because
almost 2 years. Yeah.
And the thing about it is it's always on your mind.
Right.
Like, you can't get rid of it. Okay. Because it's like when you sit down to watch some Netflix thing, you're like, oh, you know what? Like, I should be writing my book right now because I need to get all this done, and I'm not going to get it done if I'm sitting here watching Netflix for 3 hours. So it was like always on my mind. So I underestimated when I came up with this notion about how all-consuming it is if you want to be timely and stay on your timeline. And then things come up.
And
right?
that 2 years that you spent working on the book, I think that includes, it was a couple of months in the planning and the chapter outlining. And then there was also, I think you're also referring to.
I took a hiatus for a while.
You took a hiatus when life was just too intense, but also then I think that you're also including in that time period the the revision and editing process, which, editing includes rewriting, right? Editing isn't just like spell checking. Like editing is.
I've read this book so many
writing.
times. I'm like, I should have every stat in my head. But it's an intent. And that's the thing is like, so you write and then things happen. So then I just got to the point where COVID happened. And that was actually, as far as writing goes, gave me a little bit more leeway because I was writing them from remotely. I was working remotely, so I could really fit the writing in while I was also working because I could just never leave my
But you, on top of COVID or before COVID, you had a bunch of like personal stuff that would make a lot of people give up. So what were some of the challenges that you faced? You had.
Some of them weren't challenges and some of them were challenges. But it's like, first of all, I got married, which I wasn't planning on. I was planning on it, but I wasn't planning on it really. But then Mark popped the question and I said yes because he's a good egg. But, then we had to negotiate a prenup because, of course, I wouldn't get married without a prenup. And then I had decided I wanted to buy a house. So, and at that moment, the exact perfect house came up. But I was in another house I was renting. So we decided I did buy the house and I bought it on my own. I told Mark it was a condition to our marriage that only I buy the house. And then it had to be, certain things had to be renovated, one of which was my office, which I'm sitting in now, that was like a movie thing. People have like a movie screen in here, and I'm like, I don't need a movie screen. I need an office. So I needed to stay in the other house until this house got done. So the deal was I need my office to be done by like January, February. Okay, that didn't happen. Didn't happen until way after that.
And this office that you're building out was supposed to also be like you're the sanctuary for writing. So you didn't you didn't even have that. Yeah,
gonzo. And then, so there was all of that, just the stress of buying the house, the stress of, renovating the house and finding all these people who sometimes show up, sometimes don't show up, paying them all, and then also moving. And then in between all of that, I have very elderly parents. My mother has, not Alzheimer's, excuse me, she has dementia. And there has been ongoing, and I'm an only child. My parents are in Pennsylvania, so I had to go back to Pennsylvania a number of times because there were some issues that, I had to deal with that were just pressing. Those are time sensitive. I can't just say, oh, sorry, parents, I can't come and deal with it.
Right.
So there was all of these things going on. And
meanwhile, didn't your daughter get married in the middle of all that too?
No, she's getting married in October.
So that got pushed because of COVID. Yeah. But
fun time. So so now, so that's the other thing is like, in addition, so my book comes out in May and I have a PR agent in New York now. And, I'm trying to promote my book, so on and so forth. Well, I didn't think anyone was getting married in October of 2022. I thought we were going to do this in 2023, and that would be wrong. So now I wasn't anticipating paying for a wedding in New York City in October of 2022. So then that affects my business. I have to reevaluate. I have to recalibrate about my expenditures for the year because now all of a sudden I have this other thing that's like not small. And I was going to do some other work in the house this year, which I'm not doing now. It's been indefinitely postponed. There's only so many dollars. And I had to decide, is this platform more important than what I wanted to do in this house? And I said to myself, I've put so much work into this now. To stop would actually be such a disservice to myself because other people needed other things for me that I just couldn't. I can't say no about the wedding. I'm excited for the wedding. So it was a journey and it was exhausting. So I got to the point where between the social media demands, the book demands, and the house and not having a space, I just remember it was like right before Christmas. And I was like, you know what? I need to take a break because I know this feeling. I am so burnt out that I can't even string a sentence together. So if I want the book to be good, I need to come back at this fresh, And
but also, what happened?
Move into the house.
And what happened in there? I think your husband had didn't he?
Oh, and then he broke his shoulder.
Right. So that's
right after we moved.
Right after you moved.
Terribly.
Right. Yeah.
Like he still hasn't recuperated. Almost a year and a half later, it was such a bad break, and so he could not help unpack any boxes.
Right.
It literally happened the day after we moved in.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we're actually still married after that, even though it wasn't his fault, I was so mad at him for breaking his shoulder. I'm being truthful about it. I was like, are you kidding me? This is when you're going to break your shoulder? This is not a good time.
Oh my God. Okay. So with all of that going on, it's understandable that you took a break, and you know what? I think that good on you for recognizing, you know, what you needed in order to go forward was to temporarily slow down or stop, you know? So, that's just another example of, caring for your own ability to, you know, keep, you know, you're filling the well,
every
right?
aspect of yourself. Yeah.
But so what about with all of this going on, how did you look at all those words out? Tell me about your actual writing process. How did you write this manuscript? Did you have a special place or a certain time of day or lucky socks or like what?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I am a very early morning person. So I don't know why, but
it doesn't surprise me for some reason.
My best thoughts come to my head when I'm either on a treadmill or I'm sitting at my desk at 5 a.m. in the morning and it's quiet, and I have a cup of coffee. But the way I'm a pretty methodical person, so I researched every part of the book, right? There's a lot of research that went into this book. So I did my research and I started off with just making a page of all my research sources and then kind of categorizing them as to where they fell into whatever I was writing about in that chapter. And so I start with that, and that was kind of like got the juices going as I was researching. Then after I did that, I would do a very kind of broad outline of the chapter. Like, what am I going to talk about first? What am I going to talk about second? And I also like to put quotes and other things in there. So I would try to think about quotes or other ideas that came in that would make it more interesting. And then so that's how I did each chapter. And then I would just start to write, you know, and sometimes I'd be amazed because I'd start writing and I think, yeah, okay, you know, I don't know how long this chapter's going to be. And then like 8,500 words later, I'm like, oh my God, I've just written a pretty long chapter here, you know. I was surprised because I thought this is going to take me forever. But because my research was very organized and then I had kind of a broad outline, I was able to like have some momentum as I was writing. And then, and so, for example, with the parts of the book that were more about historical things and not quite as tied to tactical steps that you could take, but more kind of
contextual,
riffing, but contextual historical things.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed writing those parts because I thought it was so interesting, and I loved telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
So once I got what my core story was going to be, or what facts I was trying to talk about historical things, it really gave me the room to kind of riff a little bit when I was writing. So that was kind of how I got through just creating a chapter.
And how long would you sit and write for at one time? Did you have did you have like a regular, okay, this is my 2-hour window, or did you just go and go and go until you ran out of steam? How, you know?
I would say like generally, I mean, one of the things I did learn, and I'm kind of having to remind myself about that now when I start back to the blogging, is that sometimes you just have to write wherever you are. So you might have to write on your laptop on an airplane because that's the time you have, right? So it's not always going to be like you're sitting at your desk with your cup of coffee and the light's just right and all the stars are lined up in the sky. To get this done, you just have to be able to write, you know, at certain times. So I would have a window of maybe, I'd say the longest window for me was probably about 5 hours. Then I would have to take a break. But I want to say one thing about this too. I had to go to my parents for a while during the editing process. And that is kind of like sometimes rewriting parts of things and so on and so forth. And maybe it was even during the actual writing of the book. I go there so frequently, I can't now get the timeline page. It doesn't matter. I know that I had to, sometimes I stay at a hotel when I go there because they live in a very small house. And it's just, my mom gets a little antsy if someone's in her house 24 hours a day. So, anyway, I needed to get a whole section done because I had to send it to my editor because I was really up against it. And I remember I finished everything I had to do at my parents' that night, dinner, the whole 9 yards, and I was going to go back to the hotel. And there was a mini tornado. So all of a sudden I couldn't drive to the hotel, right? And I was like, are you kidding me? So then about an hour and a half later, they were like, okay, pass, you can go back out on the road. Drove back to the hotel. By this time it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I just stayed up till 3:30 in the morning and cranked out what I needed to crank out. And that was the end of that story. Because it had to be done and I had to put myself in the mood. I got a pot of coffee, I sat down, and then I turned to wine, and then I just kept writing.
Good for you. That's hard to do. And so, some people find that little and often is the way. Some people find that after 2 hours, they're just not good for much anymore. And they just can't, there's diminishing returns at that point. And then other people are binge writers and they can go for a good 5 or 6 hour stretch. I'm like that, Kim. I can do those when I'm writing, I can do a good 5 or 6 hour stretch, but it takes me a lot to settle down and get into it. So I think the takeaway here is it's really important to recognize that, you can't just follow somebody else's prescription for like, this is what your writing cadence should look like. Do a half an hour every morning. It's like, that's not going to work for some people. If you're the kind of person who needs to really take time to sort of get yourself into the flow, you want to stay in that flow as long as you can.
And that's the thing. So that was the thing. It's like, I'd reread what I wrote and I was like, hey, I like this, I don't want to lose my momentum. I'm in it now. I know what I want to say. And now I'm like, my fingers are like, I don't want to stop, because if I stop, I'm going to lose my thread,
Yeah.
It's like you get a rhythm, or I do. That's how it's kind of like when I run. I start off running and I'm like, I hate this. And then, once I get past like mile 1, I'm like, feeling better. By mile 2, I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. I feel endorphins kicked in.
Yeah.
This is very similar to that for me.
And you break through the wall, right? You break through the wall and then it's good until it's not. And then you got to stop.
I mean, my main thing that I had to do was like say, okay, this is the last word I'm writing now in this chapter. It's time to stop this chapter. You need to stop now.
You mean you felt like sometimes you did, like you had to make yourself like what you wanted to go on and on and on?
You said enough. Stop. Move on.
What surprised you about the editing process?
Well, I have to say, I thought it was pretty good. It was good. I loved both of them.
You had a substantive editor and then a copy editor. So that's what you mean with both of them. So I had
Allison and Ariel. Ariel was good. But I also thought it was interesting sometimes to hear her point of view on some of the things that I wrote. Because obviously I only have my point of view, right? And she's a younger person, a millennial, and she really had some good insights. And some of the stuff she said, I was like, I don't agree, and I'm sorry, but I don't really care about stay-at-home dads. I can throw a line in there about it, but to be honest, that's not my audience. So she was much more maybe concerned about certain things that I was like, no, I don't care about that. But I thought it was good that she brought up a lot of things, because a reader might be thinking that.
Yeah.
And when you're writing, or at least when I'm writing, because I'm not a book person or an author, or well, I am an author now, but a publisher, whatever. I was thinking about what I wanted to say, not about how people would be hearing it.
Right. And it's often said that the editor is the first reader. Like the editor stands in for all the readers to come, and it's their job to say, this is what I'm curious about, or this is what you need to explain more deeply, or this is what you need to set up more clearly. So you found that your editor's questions and prompts sometimes caused you to relook at what you were writing.
I think not only substantively, but I think she cleaned up some of the language, or took made things maybe a little user friendly. I actually enjoyed the editing process. I was surprised. I mean, I had, there were deadlines as with everything, but I thought it was really good. I was very pleased with the outcome of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. So now the book is out there. It was published by Wonderwell in May 2022, and it is in stores. It's distributed all across the land, and it's available on Amazon, and people are buying it and they're reading it, and they're you're going on podcasts, you're promoting it, you're getting feedback from readers. It's real after all these years of putting all this effort and time and money into it. How does it feel to see it out there?
No, this sounds kind of crazy, but I mean, I have some in my office here, and sometimes I look at it and I think, when did I have time to write that book? How did I do that? Like, I look at it, it's kind of like when I look at my kids, right? I think, like, they're in their 30s now, so they're old, right? And well, two of them are late 20s, whatever. But I look at them and I think, wow, did I really have those kids? Because it seems so long ago. But like, I look at the book, and my husband was reading it. He read it cover to cover, and not my first husband, my second husband, but I did give a copy to my first husband, and said, "Thank you for being you." That's why I wrote it. But anyway, that's another story. But yeah, I'm amazed. And then, like, when I hear people say, like, this is crazy inspirational, or some woman went to this event I talked about last week, and she wrote to me and said, I was so motivated by your description of the book. And they bought 30 books and handed them out. And she said, I got up at 4:30 in the morning to read your book. And I was just like, oh my God, if nothing good ever happens to me again, that just made my life, that was so amazing. And I've had so many wonderful comments and feedback that I'm really happy I did it. And weirdly, I think, oh, I know what I'm going to write my next book on. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? You're not writing any books until.
Well, tell me what. Okay, but give us a sneak peek. What would it? Okay, what would it be if you do it?
Well, I think about all the different things that people have reacted to in this book, and I think there still has yet to be written a good book on divorce strategy, pre-gaming divorce, and a lot of other things in that space. Because I think people write like tongue-in-cheek books about it, but nobody really talks about, this is a tactical game that has a very deep effect on your financial health if you've been married for 10 years or more. Mm-hmm. And I'd also like to fold into that kind of a whole thing about relationships, marriage, they're all tied together. So if you do the premarital thing, then maybe your divorce won't be so bad. But right. Also just like understanding there are just some steps you've got to take during the pre-divorce and during the divorce and the post-divorce that are going to be really, really good for you to do to make sure that everything is not just the luck of the draw or rolling of the dice of a divorce process.
Well, I think you should write that book, Kim. Let's do it now that you have all this time on your hands.
Yeah. Honestly, promoting the book and the PR and the platform, I'm just as busy as I was before. And now I just got to get through October 15th and the wedding. Sure the wedding goes off without a hitch. And then I'm going to bask in my idleness until the end of the year. And then I think,
so you're gonna relax from October to the end of the year?
That's my plan. Yeah. Although I still have to worry about what I'm going to do about these courses for the website. So
okay. Don't relax too much. Right.
Because the thing is, when you have the momentum, you can't stop, right? Yeah. Because now I've written the book, it's out there, and people are talking about it. And I have I'm going to be sitting on a panel in October called Women on Wall Street. So they've asked me if I come and be a panelist. And also, there's a couple people that are reading the book right now, one of whom is got a very high-profile platform. So in October, she's going to be interviewing me. So there's going to be promotion of this book, in my mind, through the end of the year.
Kim, what would you tell someone, words of advice for someone who is planning to write a book about their passion and their subject matter expertise?
Well, I would say make sure that you have all the information you need to substantiate expressing what you need to say about your passion. So do your research. Make sure that you have the time, or you can make the time, and you're really, really committed to that, because otherwise it could be a real downer if you keep missing deadlines and you get frustrated. So just make sure you have the time, or that you just 100% are committed to the time of doing it, because that's so important. And I would also say, do your research about who you're going to work with to do the book. I mean, I know people self-publish. I don't even know if I completely understood what that meant, but I just know that it didn't sound like something I wanted to do, because I don't like to do things unless they're professional and I'm proud of them and they have legs and they can be put out there in the big wide world against anybody's book, right? And so that was really important to me. I wanted it to look like and read like and be presented like a legitimate book.
High quality book. Yeah. And it is. It's gorgeous. Book. It's gorgeous. Like we've got the lovely gold foil on the cover and
I've got so many compliments on the branding of this book. Like today I was on a call with someone who is a media and branding person, not as even to do with the book, just someone I was talking to who is a kind of a strategic collaborator with me. And she didn't even know who I was. And then she got the book and she was just like, this book is really, really good. It covers things in a different way, but she said, I love the branding of the book. I like the way the book,
the cover design, and
she's bought the book for maybe 4 or 5 people that she knows, and also younger women in her life that she wants to share the book with. So a neighbor of mine bought 5, and he is giving them to his 2 daughters and his nieces.
That's amazing. Oh, Kim, you are such an inspiration. You're a dynamo. And the book is The Fiscal Feminist, a financial wake-up call for women. Tell our listeners again where they can follow you and find out more about you.
Yes, you can go on Instagram and follow me at The Fiscal Feminist, or Facebook. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Kimberlee Davis. And you can go to www.thefiscalfeminist.com. You can buy the book through a link on there. And you can listen to my podcasts, which are on any podcast platform, Apple, Spotify,
and the name of the podcast is also The Fiscal Feminist.
It's also The Fiscal Feminist.
Love your brand alignment. You're consistent.
Everything is called The Fiscal Feminist. I like to keep it simple. That way I'll remember it too.
Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Maggie, thank you so much, not only for having me today, but for all your help, your guidance, your knowledge, and just being she's a top gal, this Maggie. So if you're going to write a book, I would say she should be on your speed dial.
Awesome. Thank you. I really hope this conversation has inspired you to give so much of your gift to the world that it expands you into your greatest possible version of yourself. Remember, it's not selfish just because we also benefit from it. And here's where I get to make a selfish request. New podcasts need all the help they can get. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and subscribe to us on your favorite platform. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Selfish Gift Podcast. And send me a DM. I'd love to hear how you're sharing your gift with the world.